Ladies and gentlemen, Violent Games here, coming at you with another Dishonored 2 build. Today, I'm going to be doing the Howler build. This build is very, very thematic and sticks to a very, very strong theme. So if you're not into role-playing and staying to themes, then get the fuck... No, you can do whatever you want. I honestly don't care. However... let's get into the Howler build, shall we? So playstyle-wise, we're going to be very, very similar to our Howler counterparts, and in order to do this, we need to utilize stealth and ambush tactics, as well as not shy away from open fights either. If an open fight is more convenient than sneaking up behind everyone to deal with them, then go ahead and rush in there and fight them if you want to. A mixed playstyle is definitely the best way to get the full experience of this build. As far as our gear and our weapons and such, we are only going to be using our sword and crossbow with a variety of bolts, as Howlers are only notorious for using bolt-based weaponry and sword fighting. That's all they are really known for. They don't have any supernatural powers, and with that being said, we are also going to reject the Outsider's Mark in order to maintain 100% into the theme of this build. Now, some people would argue, but Paolo has superpowers. That's not necessarily true. Paolo takes advantage of a few magical trinkets, and we will do the exact same. So, without further ado, I'd like to go into some Bonecharm compositions with you, as well as talk about our necessary upgrades, and then I'm going to go into a verdict on how I feel this build plays out on the very, very hardest difficulty, that being custom. So, let's jump right into it. Alright, let's go over our necessary upgrades for the Howler build. First off, you're going to grab all Crossbow Upgrades. Second off, grab the Hardened Bolt upgrade. Third, grab Howling Bolts as soon as you can get them. You're going to be using these to deal with mobs in the game. Like, say, for example, 3 or 4 enemies gang up on you and you're a little uncomfortable and in the corner and frightened. You can pop this out and immediately deal with them. It's pretty great. After that, we're going to be grabbing Incendiary Bolt and Combustion Bolt. This is kind of like having a grenade for your crossbow. It's wonderful. It has a decent AoE, but it's pretty... actually, I would say it's a little strict. It's not super OP. You actually have to aim it to an extent, but yeah, it's still wonderful. After that, all bolt capacity upgrades so we can continue to use steel bolts. And by the way, guys, steel bolts, you can basically win the entire game with steel bolts if you honestly wanted to. You could just sit back and shoot things in the head. It's a legitimate strategy and it legitimately works, but I think you're not going to have as much fun with this build if you take that route. Next up, we're going to be grabbing all Bonecharm Slots. While we can't really upgrade our Bonecharms, I find some Bonecharms to be useful, and we'll be covering that next up. And finally, we're going to be grabbing Silent Running 1 and 2, just so we can sprint a little more, giving us more freedom as a powerless playthrough. You know, it's just nice to set up ambush points without having to crouch all the time. It's not fun. So that about covers it for the upgrades segment. I will be going into Masterwork upgrades as well, but I want to do that after I do Bonecharms for a specific reason. In terms of what Bonecharms we're going to be using for this build, guys, I like to use thematic ones as well as some that just make and break the build. So without further ado, let's jump right in. First up, I like to use Resounding Shriek. It increases the radius of our Howling Bolts. That's the most thematic thing we could do as far as Bonecharms. After that, I like to grab Exacting Aim. You get more damage from your steel bolts with the crossbow. This is, again, very thematic, and that's why I put it in there. After that, let's grab Leech Cuts, so that we can get some health back from dealing sword damage and also executing enemies. After that, I like to grab Lucky Jam, a black Bonecharm, and this just makes pistols misfire occasionally. Pistols are a big threat in a Flesh and Steel playthrough if you're not prepared, especially due to the fact that they don't ever miss on the max difficulty setting, and not having reflexes, of course, you can't just deflect the bullet as well, because we don't have superpowers in case you forgot. So after that, I like to grab Assassin's Fortune. Bolt packs sometimes contain an extra little crossbow bolt. It's convenient at times if it works, but again, it's thematic. That's why I put it in there. After that, I'm going to grab Firestarter. Firestarter is going to increase the radius of our Combustion bolts, which is just nice to have because the Combustion bolt radius can be questionable at times. After that, I like to grab Swift Shadow. It's just going to give us a little increase for our sneak speed because we can increase it to ×4. However, it's going to stack with the next Bonecharm we're going to be using called Zephyr. Zephyr increases your overall movement speed. That includes stealth movement speed as well. Having Swift Shadow is going to give it a little bump on top of that. Additionally, Zephyr will also make you take more damage, which is the only drawback. But Zephyr, especially when you don't have powers, is really, really useful because it's almost like getting a rank of speed run in the agility stat line. I don't remember what it's called. I think it's called rapid sprint, actually. But yeah, it's like getting a rank of that from the agility stat line without actually having powers. After that, I like to use Fleet Fighter so that when I pull my weapons out, it doesn't slow down my movement speed at all. It's just convenient, really. And then finally, I like to top it off with Fly Alchemy if I want to cheese the rest of the game. Once you get Fly Alchemy from the observatory off of the witch lady that lives inside, I don't know if I should say the name, spoilers in case someone hasn't played the game. If you haven't played the game, I'm not super sympathetic about spoilers. But you know what? I'll save it for the kids. Fly Alchemy, what it does is the initial ranged attack from a pistol turns into a Bloodfly and causes the enemy to be distracted. Basically, you'll never get shot at when you have Lucky Jam and Fly Alchemy, and it kind of breaks this build because of the overpowered nature of getting good parries on top of your crossbow. You're just going to become unstoppable, especially when you have on hotkey all three variations of those bolt types that I mentioned earlier. So that about covers it for Bonecharms. As for our master upgrades, guys, I like to first go off with Collector's Carapace. Basically, this is just going to let you take more damage. It's basically going to reduce overall damage, and I like to use this because it's going to help us out with our Zephyr Bonecharm that I recommended previously. It's going to help synergize with that. It's also going to help with open combat as well, which is the more challenging part of the Howler build, due to the fact that, again, you can get hit by ranged attacks, enemies just deal more damage overall on max difficulty, and the fact of the matter, in my honest opinion, I don't think you really need Moth Dust Wrappings anyways, because the overpowered nature of your crossbow. Your crossbow is going to be able to deal ranged damage to the point where your enemies can't even see you most of the time, or they're not going to spot you most of the time anyways, and you're going to get a pretty good ambush before you're seen anyhow. Moth Dust Wrappings doesn't really make the difference in this scenario, I'm just saying. So after that, I like to pick up Occult Kiss for my sword. This is going to allow us to do more damage to witches. And the reason we're going to pick Occult Kiss over the Monkey Wrench is because the way we're going to be dealing with Clockwork Soldiers is we're just going to headshot them with steel bolts to remove their vision. Once you remove a Clockwork Soldier's vision, it actually helps you dismantle everything in the room with ease. Every single guard in the room is like almost immediately killed by these things. It's kind of absurd and overpowered, and I don't even know why this mechanic's in the game. That's how strong it is. But you can enter a room in stealth, hit a Clockwork Soldier in the head, and just watch the sparks fly. It's wonderful. After that, I like to grab Long Distance Lover for my crossbow. Long Distance Lover, by far the best one in my opinion, because it basically turns your crossbow into a sniper rifle. Additionally, I don't really like the collateral damage one, because one, you have to charge it and it feels clumsy in combat. Two, you have to wait for enemies to position themselves in a certain way, or kite them into a linear alley or hallway in order for it to really be effective 100% of the time. But if you want to do like trick collaterals with your crossbow, by all means, you can go ahead and not purchase Long Distance Lover. But either way, guys, I really recommend Long Distance Lover if you want to get full effectiveness out of the crossbow. It also lets you pinpoint your target's body parts, and it'll turn off the auto aim so you can hit them below the helmet if you want to. So Long Distance Lover, huge fan of Emily's crossbow overall. After that, you can go with Deep Howl for the Ancient Howler or Ancient Howling Bolt. I don't recommend really Ancient Howling Bolt, so go with Deep Howl. It's not necessary at all, to be completely honest. Howling Bolt works just fine from its base variant, but I know someone's going to be like, what Masterwork should we use for the Howling Bolts? It's like, well, neither of them are really necessary, so if you're, purchasing them at all, just keep that in mind. The last thing you should purchase is the Masterwork for the Deep Howl. It'll turn the bolt yellow as opposed to being green. I don't really, again, the Howl the Howling Bolt, like, Masterwork upgrades just feel like they were thrown in at last minute. They don't, again, they're just pointless almost. They don't really do anything overly effective, so, yeah. Yeah, that's it for Masterwork upgrades. Alright, let's tie this build all together. What's my verdict on the Howler build? The Howler build is overpowered as all hell. Like, for so many reasons. First off, the crossbow can handle anything in the game. It can handle clockwork soldiers, it can handle witches, it can handle guards. Especially, like, guys, you can literally just use steel bolts the entire game and just cheese it. If you want to use the crossbow in a sniper-like fashion, you will just be unstoppable. I don't know why the crossbow has so much reach and so much versatility that it's just an insane weapon. Furthermore, what makes this build really powerful for a Flesh and Steel playthrough, even on the Master's difficulty, is that on the highest difficulty possible, you can turn off the ability to kind of freeze time when you're switching between weapons. You can assign all 3 crossbow variants to your D-pad, so you have quick access to all of your tools. So you have ease of access, a variety of tools, a massive amount of ammunition between missions. It's just, this build has basically everything you could to be cheesy for the Master difficulty. It's good in combat, it's good in stealth. You have cheese if you're intimidated by a situation. You can just sit back and snipe, like I said. So that's my verdict on the Howler build. It's kind of fun. If you want to challenge yourself, however, I recommend turning off the auto aim on the crossbow. The auto aim on the crossbow is insane. It's basically the game's playing you. You're not playing the game. That's how insane. If you remotely aim at a body part, the crosshair just drags directly to the center of where you should be hitting. And I'm like, it does feel kind of cheesy. But hey, you can turn it off in the options menu. So I recommend that if you were wanting more of a challenge and you wanted this playthrough to feel more like your skill than the game's, you know, holding your hand per se. So that's my verdict on the Howler build. I hope you enjoyed this one. This is Violent Games, Piss and Woof.